Songwriting, a cornerstone of the music profession, but how do you approach it? This week we find out from some top musicians who are pretty damn good at it. This is Anyone Can Play Guitar, the podcast for musicians and music lovers that takes you behind the scenes of the music industry. This week is brought to you in partnership with MGR Music. Ever wanted to learn an instrument, hone your skills, or pick up something completely new? You can get so far by yourself, however professional guidance can make all the difference. With a network of tutors right across the UK and rates starting from as little as £15 per hour, visit mgrmusic.com now to get started.
Hello and welcome to Season 2 of Anyone Can Play Guitar podcast, which is now episode 42 with me, Ben, and him,
James. So, we're kicking off the series in fine style with some great guests, and yes, that is guests plural. For Season 2, if you tuned into the intro episode, you'll know the format's changing slightly from Season 1, with a range of great guest interviews being combined together to create some fantastic content each week on a single topic. Don't worry though if you think you're going to miss out on the full interviews with some of your favourite artists, they'll also be released in their entirety as well.
So the topic today, to kick us off, is songwriting. You might recall from Season 1 we discussed the very thing with loads of people such as Paul Smith of Maximo Park.
I'd never written words particularly before, just sort of bad teenage poetry. The things that felt good were quite emotionally driven.
And Mercury Prize nominee singer-songwriter Catherine Williams.
Or sometimes I'll take a chance and think about an artist and write kind of in their voice. So it's quite nice singing in character.
This time around we have Stephen Page of Bare Naked Ladies fame.
Oh, I'm really ruthless with it. Although sometimes if some idea sticks around for a long period of time, I feel like that there was probably some value in it.
Singer-songwriter Laurel.
Yeah, that's where it starts. I always have lyric ideas. I have an idea that I might want to write about usually. I kind of have to have a subject.
Keith and Chris from We Are Scientists. Sam Duckworth, aka Get Cape, Wear Cape, Fly, and Justin Lockley of Editors. Remember, a great way to support the show is to go wherever you get your podcasts from and give us a rating and review. It really does make a big difference. Now, on with the show.
Let's start with one of the fundamental questions about songwriting. What comes first, the lyrics or the music? How do you get started? Here's Laurel speaking to James and I at the Think Tank in Newcastle on her latest tour for her debut album, Dog Violet. So the writing process for you, how does it start? Does it start music? Does it start words? And how do you put the two together?
It's always different. I keep in my notes app on my phone. I write things down that I hear, which is how I start writing book entries as well. I wrote a book recently. And yeah, that's where it starts. I always have lyric ideas. I have an idea that I might want to write about usually. I kind of have to have a subject, otherwise my chords aren't sounding the right sort of tone, or like minor, major, all that sort of stuff. But then once I feel like I really need to write something, I'll sit down and I'll make the chords, usually on my guitar or the piano sometimes, and then I start singing a melody over the top, and I do it part by part, and then I put the lyrics over the top of each part in order, Are
you writing that as in just with the view of this as one instrument and you? Are you always writing the song thinking about where drums might come in or other sort of instruments might sort of feed into it?
Never write with anticipation of anything else in my guitar.
Really?
Yeah, never. I just want to get the song. I think if a song is good enough solo with one instrument, then it's a great song. If you need any of the other stuff, I think that it's not a good enough song. It needs to be able to stand on its own. So I don't even think about the rest of it. And but that's with my style of songwriting, because arguably there's production songs which obviously are incredible, but with what I'm doing. And and then it's later on when I finished a song that I envision everything and try and make that happen.
So that was Laurel speaking. So next up, the chaps from We Are Scientists. They've been around a little bit longer, Ben.
They have. First album came out 2005, I believe. Well, the breakthrough, which was with Love and Splendour, which was probably in my top 3 albums of that year.
Excellent.
And The Great Escape was probably my favourite song of that year.
Wow. For the Californian pair, when they're songwriting, typically the words come first.
I mean, it's usually, for me, I don't know about you, like just playing around and having a melody over you know, a chord change or a riff or a bass part or something like that, and then, you know, having hundreds of those, and until you have enough that you like, and then being like, well, I should whittle them down to the ones that I will actually work on.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then do the words come next? Or are they always in the background somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, they're usually there almost never is like an incidence of being very attached to a song that has no lyrical content initially. So they usually be like a chorus that exists or like a few lines. But yeah, words like actually putting in the time to like labor over lyrics kind of always comes after we've decided we're definitely going to work on that song. Okay. Try to make that song a legitimate We Are Scientists.
Next we have Sam Duckworth, aka Get Cape Wear Cape Fly. I met up with him again at the think tank where James and I met Laurel. Bear with us on this one. There's a bit of background beats going on. We're right in the middle of sound check on it.
Occupational hazard of interviewing people between them arriving at a venue and actually going on stage.
Yep. So I cannot thank the guests enough for doing that and finding the time. And fortunately, there was a quietish booth in think tank, but you get a bit of bleed. But it just gives a bit of atmosphere.
It ebbs and flows.
It does. Normally when they're doing different instruments, which you can expect. Sam gave us his lowdown on a slightly different and interesting approach he has taken for the recent songs of Get Cape Wear Cape Fly. So, what comes first, lyrics or music?
I don't think there's a set pattern, to be honest.
Okay.
I kind of go through waves. I mean, for a long period of time, I just kind of sit and play the guitar and then kind of ad-lib vocals around it. Recently, I've been tending to record one tune in the studio with everybody, mute the guitar and vocal, and then just write a different song over the top of it.
Right, okay.
So you kind of have the structure and like the melodic and the harmonic elements to support one song, and then just be like, no, actually that bit's not working, and just be quite brutal in pre-production and kind of almost writing with everything recorded, chopping it all around, then probably go back and re-record it again.
Okay, so like making mistakes then. I won't say mistakes, but cutting the fat out then.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, like if I spend like 2 weeks writing something, I kill it.
Okay.
Really smother it. I'm like, oh, that detail's too much, and so it's about going in hard for a few days.
Okay.
And then stepping away from it and then going back in.
So then Ben prodded a little further with Sam on his interesting methods of pulling songs together.
And is
writing that way.
Right. Has that always been the same, or was that, how did it start when the very, very start, like your chronicle of human teenager type stuff?
That was very much writing on the guitar, really.
Okay.
And then just putting a basic drum machine loop out underneath it just to make sure the tempos are right and stuff. Okay. And then doing everything else in kind of post-production in the studio. Right.
And how did you find that transition from writing on acoustic to the studio and having all of this kit around you? How did you adapt to that?
Every so often there's a really steep learning curve, a new bit of software, new bit of equipment, different room or whatever. So that side of it, and I just come from the mentality really that if you're going to be in the studio or doing music stuff and there are other elements that you can learn and try and understand, it's best to know as much as you can really.
Okay.
Because it becomes easier to do things for yourself and not have to rely on others, and I think it's great when you can find the right balance of others. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that balance doesn't always work out, so if you know how to do it yourself, excellent. Just kind of teaching. I've just taught myself over the years, and every couple of years is oh no, how am I going to learn this?
And if you're looking for a cautionary tale when it comes to all the software and post-production you fiddle around with from time to time, here's Laurel again. So going back to your controlling, as you said, how So if you've got the perfect song on your guitar and your vocal, and it sounds nothing like it when it comes to the other end, when you put it through the drums and the producers and what have you, is that something you've adapted to, or has it just come naturally?
Yeah, it's different. There's still a couple of songs I think on the album that I hear them in the raw demo that I wrote with just me on my acoustic guitar, and I still think they kind of sound better like that. But you do have to let go a bit, and I love styles of music as well. I love raw songs, and you can always have that version too, but I love stylistic music. A lot of people that I listen to because the style of it is so pleasing to me. So I think I'm quite good at being, but I'm doing it, so I'm never changing it how I don't want it changed, so it's easier to change it,
So we've jumped ahead a bit here in the songwriting process, so let's jump back a bit. So before you get to the point where you've got that finished song and you're in post-production, what about a bit beforehand? So when you're writing songs, what's the difference between writing by yourself versus writing with someone else?
Someone who's ideally placed for this is Stephen Page. I caught him in Bristol on his solo tour. Fans of Bare Naked Ladies will remember Stephen Page was one of the founding members in 1988 in upstate Ontario in Canada. But now a successful solo artist in his own right, he did rise to fame with the Bare Naked Ladies, as I said, with songs such as this.
Yeah, that's them. They are the band who wrote what is now the theme song for the major hit TV show The Big Bang Theory. However, as Ben will be the first person to tell you, that is just almost a mere footnote in their back catalogue of many great hits that they've had on their career as a whole. So when it comes to songwriting, he can offer us a good insight or two on the topic of solo versus band. So Ben started with the collaborative writing.
Writing now for your own material, which you've written for a long time, has that process changed? Do you write by yourself? Do you write with a collaborator? How does that work?
It can be any or all of those things.
Okay.
A lot of the stuff I've written over the last few records have been with Craig Northey, who's playing with me in the trio. This record, I think, only has a couple co-writes. Most of it is myself. And the biggest difference is you're just not thinking about, when you're writing, at least in my experience when I was writing for BNL, I was thinking about what everybody else could bring to the songs, and thinking about that that moment when you play a new song for your band and you're kind of auditioning this thing you've worked hard at separately for your colleagues and your friends, and they have veto power usually too, or they can really change a song, usually for the better, but sometimes take it to a place you didn't expect, and it can either be exciting or disappointing. And when you're doing it yourself, you kind of have the ability to keep chipping away until you could hear that thing that you've been hearing in your head,
right?
Which can be frustrating too, but ultimately to get to that goal is really satisfying.
So later in the autumn, I met up with Justin Lockley from Editors.
Big fan of Editors.
And I met him at Reds in our university. I mean, I haven't been to Reds in a long time.
They still serve Illuminous green drinks, man.
And Illuminous purple drinks, as I remember rightly.
Ooh.
And that horrible blue one.
Do you get Illuminous purple?
I don't think you do, but it was just very purple.
Yeah,
so Justin joined Editors at a point where the band were already very successful. They was after their third album when Justin joined. Having previously played in a range of other bands himself, Justin had a diverse set of experiences to draw upon.
That's what I like to do. I like to collaborate. It's not that I don't like just doing one thing. I just can't stop working, so I have to work in multiple mediums in order to satisfy my urge to work and create.
I suppose it'll help other parts as well. It'll all feed into each other.
I think the only way you learn to progress, especially sonically and overall as well, is by collaborating with people who you don't usually work with, because it opens up new ways, new methods, new sounds, new approaches, and kind of new philosophies. It's like working with Stuart at Mogwai in Minor Victories. It's completely different. It's completely different to how I've done anything else. It's like there's a guy who makes storm cloud sized guitar parts. So then when you're crafting tunes, you kind of have to leave this massive gaping hole for Stuart to put 20,000 tracks of like really loud guitars.
Yeah.
Whereas in editors, you don't. There's a very like small cutout for where the guitars go in editors, and it's usually very direct. And the rest of it's layered up with synths. So it's and that's the only way you learn. I think that's the only way you learn how to get better at playing, how to get better at understanding music, how to get better at understanding different ways of putting music together, and especially in arranging and different ways of recording music is by working with lots of different people.
And there'll be more from Justin and others after the break.
So I wasn't like a massive Editors fan before I joined Editors, and I think that helped.
If you want to hear more from the angle of a guitarist in a band, check out episode 27 from season 1, where I met up with Duncan Lloyd of Maximo Park in a Wetherspoons for breakfast.
This week is brought to you in partnership with MGR Music. Ever wanted to learn an instrument, hone your skills, or pick up something completely new? You can get so far by yourself, however professional guidance can make all the difference. With a network of tutors right across the UK and rates starting from as little as £15 per hour, visit mgrmusic.com now to get started. So it's season 2 and we're not stopping our quest to promote as many good causes as possible that are close to the hearts of our guests. This week, Stephen Page gives us a quick snippet on the Grandmothers to Grandmothers campaign run by the Stephen Lewis Foundation.
My mother's really involved with a group. It's called the Grandmothers to Grandmothers campaign, but it's run by the Stephen Lewis Foundation.
Okay. Stephen
Lewis was the UN envoy for AIDS in Africa for years, and he runs his own NGO in which like every dollar they raise goes directly to the villages to build schools and that kind of thing. But essentially, what they realized in sub-Saharan Africa is they've lost the better part of a generation. So there are grandmothers raising children all over again, as they've lost the children in between. And my mother, being a grandmother herself, has worked very closely with them and has gone to Africa a bunch of times now to connect with these other grandmothers, and who are doing this amazing work. So the money they raise, actually does support these families. It's pretty cool work that these women who've already lived full lives then jump back in and are really hands-on.
Now back to songwriting, and we go back to Stephen Page in Bristol. How long does it take to write a song? This is where he told me about his latest album.
I need deadlines in order to get stuff done. Although I thought this record was going to be done in time for this tour. That was the plan initially. But when I finally had the time to finish it off, I had been chipping away at it for several years, and since even before the last one came out. But this was an opportunity to kind of refine those ideas or finish off the last bunch of songs. And I realized it was like there were songs that I thought no longer fit, or I was kind of sick of. I didn't feel attached to them anymore. Which is the bad part of sitting on songs. Sometimes it's best to just get them out there and keep moving.
I suppose they're not for you, are they?
Right. And then there were other songs that just in the spring this year, I realized I had a bunch of other stuff that was coming out, and I wanted to include that on the record, make it feel more contemporary to where I'm at too.
Okay.
So some of those songs came out shockingly quickly. Like usually, there's a range. There's some where I've had the idea for a song for several years and just haven't been able to make it hang together. And then other ones come out in the course of a day.
Right. So a lot of people have said similar things. There's just no rules to it, which I think is why people love it. Let's be honest.
Well, and it's the chase, the elusive. I mean, Leonard Cohen's famous quote. He said, "If I knew where songs came from, I'd go there more often."
As would we all, Stephen. As would we all. A great quote. Now, another factor to consider is the style and type of music that you write. Do you want it to be similar to what you've done before? Let's be honest, if your last song or album went well, then why change it, Ben?
Why change it indeed? If it's not broke,
don't fix it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a gamble, right? Now, your fans obviously liked it, and therefore, you want to keep going.
Yes.
But then it would get a bit boring, would it not?
It certainly would.
Back to Justin Lockley.
The good thing about this band, and I found out pretty much straight away, is they don't like repeating what they do, which is great in a band, because there's nothing, if you're out touring for like 2 years on a record globally, you get a bit tired of stuff. So if you had like 6 albums of essentially the same style of tune, you'd be bored after week 1.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good that in the like catalogue of editors now, 6 albums, it's very, very, you can go to some very, very different spaces musically on it. You know, you've got like the early period, the backroom period, really spiky post-punk stuff, and then it comes a little bit more big rock band on record 2. And then 3 just takes total like U-turn into dark electronic, analog electronic stuff.
A lot of atmosphere in that record.
Yeah, a lot of atmosphere. And then back into classic guitar on record 4, which is almost like an American sounding record, American rock record. And then 5 is like a really bleak, minimal party, in some ways kind of trip hop, kind of really dark, melancholic, electronic kind of record. Really sparse, really fuzzy, really dreamy. And then 6 is back to a lot more really accurate electronic and a lot more guitars back in.
And as you can hear, Justin falls on the side of keeping things fresh. For others joining a band like editors, it could be very tempting to do the same thing, to fit in with the similar style and what's gone before him. Not Justin though. 2013, Weight of Your Love, and then we're moving into In Dream and Violence, which you said you had more of your production engineering hat on. So how long did it take before your role became as...
what it is now?
Yeah. So like, I know you said on day 1 it felt like you were always in the band, but I bet there was still an adjustment period.
I mean, it's weird. It's weird because you got to live with other people's songs. You know, I wasn't like a massive Editors fan before I joined Editors. And I think that helped because I came at it from a very different angle to maybe someone who came in who knew all their songs inside out. It would have just made the same band again because they would have tried playing like Chris. I actively didn't want to play like Chris because it's not my style of playing. So, and I was very upfront about that. I was like, I want to play all the strings on a guitar, you know, and layer things up.
So what happens when things just aren't clicking with your songwriting? We've all been there, let's be honest.
Yes, we have.
You've had a great idea, but it just won't come together as a song. I can remember countless times where we had a blindingly brilliant 30 seconds.
Yes.
That just wouldn't come together as a song. So how long do you keep at it? You know, when do you pull the plug? Ben, this is one of the many things you asked Stephen Page.
How do you know when to go, right, this is not working? Whatever I thought this was, it's either not very good, or I'm not feeling it, or I want to park it. How ruthless are you with that?
Oh, I'm really ruthless with it. Although sometimes if some idea sticks around for a long period of time, I feel like that there was probably some value in it. I just maybe wasn't seeing it from the right angle. I'm thinking it was something that it wasn't. And sometimes, you know, you think of a song as being some kind of it's an opportunity to say something politically or about yourself or something like that, and sometimes it's like that's not what that's for. You know, melodic ideas will show up in multiple songs sometimes as I'm kind of working through different ideas, and sometimes only one makes the cut.
Once you've got the core of a song, James, like that 30 seconds, or more probably than 30 seconds when it comes to us,
Can be.
It typically takes some refinement, perhaps some layering up. In season 1 we spoke to Roddy Womble of Idlewild about the importance of having a creative space with no distractions. This concept works for editors too. Here's Justin.
So I think in the production way I demoed a lot of the stuff for Weight of Your Love, and then we went over to Nashville to do that with Jakia King, which was great. And then from In Dream we went up to Scotland and like decamped into this place middle of nowhere on the west coast, like 30 minutes down a single track road in a car to get to the nearest village, totally isolated in this great spot overlooking the coast, overlooking the Isle of Jura. And basically how we worked it was I'd be in the middle of the room with all the recording gear and my big table. We had all the PA stuff in there. We just basically made a studio out of this, essentially what was like quite a posh wedding hall in the middle of nowhere. And then Tom would have his station with a piano, a couple of synths and his guitars. Russell would have his bass and then a couple of keyboards. Elliot had like a Rick Wakeman-esque like amount of analog synths, and Ed had a load of drum machines. and his kit that we barely used. It was mostly all electronic. And then we just worked through the tunes. We get up in the morning, there's nothing else to do. Barely any internet. And we had a chef there. So we didn't really leave the place. Apart from once a week, I drove everyone down to the pub on a night. And we had a couple of pints and went back and worked. We were working solid days from 10 in the morning to 10, 12 at night. And we just refined all Tom's Genesis's songs. And we just went through and it all came through a process of recording. It all came through of laying down foundations and then working, taking away or adding or, and we had we had time to be able to take a step back and look at it and change things. So there was literally no one else, no engineer, just me in the middle of the room with a few mics, some nice bit of recording gear and a laptop.
Now, something that can happen at any point throughout the songwriting process, perhaps more often towards the end, is getting some feedback from somebody else. I think this is pretty important.
Very important.
Now, this can be tough, right? It can be a bit embarrassing,
Yeah.
If you don't know that person well, if they're not trusted, you're opening yourself up really to.
Or if you really love that song, you just want them to love it too.
Yeah, it could batter your confidence if they don't like it. Hell, I mean, there's loads of reasons, right? Why
there's loads of reasons to do it, and there's loads of reasons not to do it.
Exactly, yeah. It can be quite a personal thing to share something that you've written and feel like they might. They might not like it. You might feel embarrassed. You might. The list goes on. It's just a normal human trait for such a thing to be quite nervous to share your music with someone else.
Yeah.
Speak to many established musicians though, and they'll often tell you that if you can get a trusted voice who can give you proper constructive feedback, it is essential. Stephen Page again.
So, still talking about the new album, is there anyone that you bounce the songs off? So if you've got a demo or just even the noodles of a song, have you got that person to say tell me exactly what you think?
Oh yeah, Craig Northey, who is my producing partner on this record, but tours with me all the time. He's got his own gig and his own band, The Odds, that he plays with, but he's for a long time been my sounding board. He can be the most positive person I know, which is a great thing, but he can also say, if he has a criticism of the song, it makes me have to come up with an appropriate argument as to why I have so much stuff on there or whatever. And if I can't come up with an appropriate argument, then I realize he's right. And I do respect his opinion. You need to have those kind of people.
You have to, yeah, definitely.
And the other thing is, as much as I enjoy I do most of the recording myself, and I like mixing, I like the whole process, but I always send stuff off to somebody else to mix, because to me, just to have another set of ears is really important. And on some mixes, I can be very particular about what it is I want this to sound like, and other times I'm just kind of just put it up and follow things that you think are appropriate, and occasionally I'll go back with notes saying there was a guitar lick there that needs to be turned up, or those kinds of things.
Yeah, that is I found that a strange process. We had a friend who was willing to take that off our hands, and then going through and going, I need to listen to this with the object of put my guitars louder because I'm better than everyone else, because I wasn't.
Right. Well, in a band you have that thing too. You have this sense of part of you wants to step forward and you have the spotlight shone on your part. And sometimes it's just a matter of you just want to be heard. You just want to be you want what you're doing to be heard.
That riff or something. Yeah.
Exactly. I played that part for a reason. And sometimes I remember the first time that Bob Clearmountain mixed a Bare Naked Ladies record. It was the first time that I could hear my guitar loud and clear, and my playing had gotten better. I was never a particularly great player back in the old days, and that dynamic becomes part of the band dynamic. You're the good guitar player, you're the not good guitar player. That's what people start to think. But he didn't know who was who. He just put the parts up and went, this part needs to be louder here, this part needs to be louder here. And it was astonishing for me to hear myself in context of the band mix without any of the politics of who's supposed to be louder or quieter or brighter or darker or whatever else. They just did what served the song in the mix.
So we spoke about the many different factors of a song getting started. Is it the right song? Is it the wrong song? Getting that trusted voice, layering up, getting the fundamentals of a song. So when you finally got your song completed and you're happy with the end product, clearly you should wait until that end point until you share it or release your music to the public, right?
Well,
one thing I look back on, and I wish I had a bit more time to figure out who I was before I started putting things out in public. Saying that, I'm glad that I did, because I had I wanted to put anything out, share my art, do everything. And some people I know are still, they're the same age as me, mid-20s, and they're about to put out their first thing because they've been too scared to put something out beforehand because they want it to be perfect. So there's like varying scales of it. Really glad that I put things out really early. But I also wish that I had nurtured my talents a bit more before I'd shared with the world who I was, because I'm very different now to when I released a lot of that music.
Okay.
And I'm asked to play it, and I'm still known for that, which is fine, but it does live with you. The internet doesn't go away.
No, it definitely doesn't.
Yeah.
I really like that point, because I can
like
see
both sides of it, actually.
Yeah, because a lot of people, when they first pick up an instrument for the first time, you generally all sound awful. And there's obviously a point where you get to in your mind where you think it's good enough in your own mind to share.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. What if any sort of thought process did you go through at the point in time where you were getting to that point where you thought, this is now something that I want to share with people?
I never had that. All I did, I wrote songs and I wanted to share them. That's
Straight
literally
away.
it, yeah. It's lucky that there was other people around. In fact, I wrote a song and my record label didn't want me to release it, so I put it online anyway because I really wanted to.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's what you're like when you're young. It's really good. In fact, now I think more about things. I want to get things right. And I mean, you have to eventually if you're going to do it professionally and make professional albums. Like, it does need to be of a certain level. But, I just wanted to get it all out there, show people what I'm doing. I do have that. I'm very expressive. That's why I write music. So as soon as I've written a new song and I'm happy with it, I want people to hear it.
I think both of our points are great, though, because you could spend 10 years getting that perfect first single.
Of course,
so
yeah.
I think you're doing yourself a bit of a justice to see you throwing it out willy-nilly.
Yeah. Well, I could only just have released music now, but funny enough, like, one of the songs we're playing in the set is called Blue Blood, and it is one of my oldest songs. Actually, I wrote it when I was 19, and I kind of fell out of love with it because the production's very different from what I'm doing now. It's a different style, but we started playing it as a band, and it occurred to me in the middle of it, I was like, wow, this is a great song. Like, the writing of this, I would dream of writing another song as good as this. And, I was like a lot younger. I didn't have as much experience in studios or writing, but arguably it's an incredible song that I would be stoked if I wrote that now. Mm-hmm. So it does, if you've got like artistry, it's like there's nurturing and building that talent, but there's always like the raw form of it, which you happen upon, whatever age you are, really.
So there we have it. A whole host of things to think about when writing songs. I hope you've enjoyed the new format of the show.
I've enjoyed doing it, James, I must admit.
I like it better. I think it's worthwhile. Now, there's going to be additional snippets from the interviews that you've heard today that'll pop up in other episodes in future weeks. But again, as we've said, the full interview with everyone you've heard today will be released in full at the end of the season.
So, as a reminder, if you like the show, please take a few seconds to give us a rating and a review. It really helps. Hit that subscribe button from wherever you get your podcasts from. It makes a massive difference in helping us grow our audience.
But wait, Ben, before we go, in the intro episode, we had a quiz question.
We did have a quiz question.
After we were looking at all of the listeners across the world and the 69 different countries who'd listened to us prior to season 2 releasing. Now, I guessed there was 223 countries in the world. Mm-hmm. You guessed 196.
I initially said 160 something, but I think I was way off.
Yeah, well, I think in the interim period between your initial guess and your refined guess, there was some sort of cheating going on.
Why is that?
As there's a bit of debate, and there's...
I bet the UN are involved.
They are, but typically it looks like 195 countries. Bella is the answer. So well done. Well done.
And if you want another question before next week, here's another one regarding the countries that may or may not listen to us. Out of 195 countries in this world, what is the only one whose flag does not contain red, white or blue?
Great question. Coming up next week, the topic is touring. The most fun thing about making music, or a necessary evil? Opinion can often be split. Amongst others, you'll hear again from We Are Scientists.
We no longer really do that very much, but it definitely was like part of what was fun about touring back then for 27 years.
All of the show notes for today's episode can be found at acpgmusic.com, along with our back catalogue of episodes. If you like what you hear, or perhaps have some improvements or specific guests you'd like us to consider, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at info@acpgmusic.com or hit us up on social media. Keep supporting upcoming artists, and we'll catch you next time.